Welcome to this episode of our PaTTAN Behavior Bytes summer series dedicated to families, educators, community members, and students preparing for the return of school in the fall of 2020. Please note, no one at the time of this recording knows what the fall opening will look like, but we have invited folks with various backgrounds and experiences to share best practices and resources.
So as we move through, we've kind of gone through the summer and we're headed back to school, and some are going in person and some are doing virtual. And I know that schools are kind of wrestling with some of the equity issues and how to address them. How are you feeling as parents with the school year and going back? What concerns, what excitements do you have? You know, what is it like in your house right now?
Well, in the Shields household, it's a very mixed bag. It's the answer to your question is yes. There's that craving for school, but when we discuss it, it's craving for school the way it felt in 2018. It's not craving for school the way that it's maybe being portrayed now, where we don't have recess, we don't have art class together. I can't, touch and sit next to, all sandwiched together, regardless of how long the lunch table is. We're all going to fit on 3 seats because that's how our little people eat. That's none of that is occurring. So there was some anxiousness about if we go virtual, are we harming them? Are they being more secluded? Are they developmentally progressing and the like? So I'm sure ignorance is bliss when you overthink things, but so the short answer is that there's been some anxiety and no shock. The children are by far more resilient, more adaptive, and more comfortable with, this is cool. We're all good. It's mom and dad that are having these late night conversations and drilling down into the minutia. That our children are really comfortable with things and rolling with it well.
My kids went back in person, and my wife and I went back and forth about it. Like, that was the plan. We did look at virtual options, and again, back to what Bob said, we just didn't think it was. There's obviously health risks from COVID, but then there's obviously health risks from them at their age being confined to the house. And like I said, we're in a pretty remote, isolated area, so we just felt that what was best for them was to be back with peers. And I would echo, they have been really resilient about it. When we started back with their instrument lessons over the summer with the masks and everything like that, they really have adapted to it really well. They'd obviously prefer not to wear them, but it wasn't a struggle to get them to do it. They don't seem anxious about being out in public either. We'll see how this year goes in terms of if we're able to if this works, can we keep it open? Can we keep that going? On the flip side, I have concerns about training them to social distance because, my kids are young and I don't want them to think that this is like a permanent way we want to interact with people. But, there are the safety precautions that schools are putting in, and they were just really excited. They're the happiest I've seen them in months to just get back to school and to have that, I think, what familiar and normal, be around peers and that sort of thing. So and then obviously it's very anxious for us. My biggest concern is my parents and my wife's parents. How much can we interact with them now that the kids are out and coming in contact with many people like that? So I don't know, it had me up the night before, I'm not gonna lie, but everyone seems very happy and pleased to be back with this. So we're just, trying to stay positive and hope that it can work.
For our family, our daughter has some health conditions that have her in a high risk category. So for me, I felt right away there was no way I wanted her in the building because of her health concerns. My middle son, my rising 11th grader, told me definitively, I'm not going back there. So um, that was an easier decision for us. And we're also lucky that our district gave parents multiple options as far as how your students can be receive their education this year. And it worked for us. My kids started on Tuesday, and we're still getting the kinks out. As families, we're working to get the kinks out, and as a school district, I see them working to get kinks out. I was texting Drew earlier that it's the third day of school, and I've sent my third email. but every time it's a quick response. It's always, grateful. And as a parent who's also an educator, who's also a consultant, who's also a school psychologist, sometimes you're like, all this stuff, and I don't want to come in with my PaTTAN hat. I want to be the parent. I don't want to come in and give you a professional learning session. I just, want to be a mom. So it's always that balance, from my perspective and how I'm interacting with the school. But what I'm seeing is teachers who care about their students, teachers who are doing their best. I see students who are doing their best as well, and I really love that I'm seeing patience on all fronts.
Yeah, agreed. Our house, we initially had talked about going remotely, but my rising senior is really struggling with the thought of not being with her friends. So like Chandra's district, we were offered multiple options. And at first we had considered, how we were going to mitigate any risks, because my husband has a liver disease and takes immunosuppressants. So the children being exposed to and possibly, becoming sick or symptomatic from COVID is very real in our house, because then that would exacerbate his situation. So my son, who's a 10th grader, he also has a mild form of OCD. And so, of course, he's very rigid with his rules. And he was like, I am not going to school because, if dad gets sick, then, everything changes. And we've had some, struggles in the past pre-pandemic that we've had to, be flexible and adjust and, come together in those really tough situations. So that was part of our conversation and our decision making. But in the end, the health department here in Chester County felt like the recommendation should be that schools not reopen until August 9th. So that decision was made for us, and now we're now figuring out what to do. But there is the aspect of, well, one of my children with ADHD thrives in this remote environment. The other one needs additional supports. And, like Chandra was saying, when do you put on your parent hat and let the kids figure it out and let the teachers help sift and sort the information and support them, across a screen? And then when do I intervene and be the professional and, enlist some sort of organizational or executive function strategies in addition to and with the permission of the teachers, in supporting my children. It's been really interesting. My son, who does not want to go back to school, really needs the FaceTime with his teachers for that additional accountability. So we're still kind of in dialogue about it, actually.
So who's got the perfect answer? What do we do? It's
I think that is a great question. I think it really depends on your family and your individual kids. And that's the thing that I have educator friends in Florida and Minneapolis and South Carolina. And there's all of this stress about what's the right thing to do. And I think it's just hard to know the right thing to do. But I feel like I said, I believe people are doing their best. And for families, I think you have to take your family situation into and think about your context as you're making these big decisions. And I have a close friend who's an administrator, and she doesn't want to send her kids back, but she doesn't really have a choice because there's, and and it's a lot of conversations about not beating yourself up because you're making the best decision that you can for your circumstances. And that's really what I'm telling my friends who are parents, who are educators, that we can't operate in guilt in this situation because this is unknown for all of us.
And that is a really well explained answer. And it's not, you're not playing politics like, well, geez, you're talking and you're not picking a side. Give me an answer. Like no, if I'm a single parent and my job, I work construction, I need to be on a roof to get paid for roofing. I can't type it on a keyboard. Then I have a very different set of circumstances, and I have to do what's best for me and my family. And to your point, it's nice to see and hope for patience and understanding. Sometimes that's on short supply, but we're all coming from different situations. If my wife and I work and we are gone 8 to 10 hours a day, the virtual learning, that's a lot harder to pull off and not lose my children to Child Protective Services. So what supports do we have within the neighborhood, or what extended family do we have within this region that's reasonable? Those are all game-changing factors.
Yeah, Bob, to what you were saying, I'm on some Facebook groups, and some of the families are banding together and creating pods, learning pods. So that's a support that, maybe is within some of the communities that, the parents need to be in face-to-face, in-person jobs and, be able to have their child supported while their children are learning remotely.
So kind of shifting gears a little bit, a lot of trauma experts and those who talk about resiliency, they share that for children, maintaining, and even for some adults, maintaining traditions, rituals, those type of things during times of crisis is a really important kind of protective factor, as well as something that aids resiliency. So what have you done as a family or at home to kind of maintain some traditions, rituals, or have you created new ones during this time?
We've kept up with some things, but I think the biggest thing that came out of this for us was maybe not necessarily preserving rituals, but we did actually create some new kinds of ways that we kind of came together as a family. We kept our meal times, like family meal times, kind of an important thing. We kept our bedtime pretty firm. They were allowed, sleeping in, getting up early in the morning was not as much of a priority because no one had to be anywhere, but made it sure to come together at those meal times and to keep those kind of bedtime kind of routines and things in place. I mean, which is for me, for my family, I don't know, since my kids are young, we still have that stuff. But we started doing some new things together. We started playing some new games, like board games and some things like that. And so we were able to kind of find these kind of like new activities that we hadn't done before because we were busy and we were away from home, and now that we're here more. So like some things that I was really into as a kid, I kind of brought back in some of the old board games. We burned through every Star Wars movie. We watched all 9 of them, which my son prior to this had not been interested in Star Wars. And then now he's like, he's got things memorized and expert and everything. And we went through all the movies, Lord of the Rings. I don't know. We got, so like it was kind of neat to kind of get together around some of these things that previously we hadn't necessarily shared in, but now we do. And I don't know, I would assume when he talks about it, it'll be like, I remember we did this, and it was the kind of, COVID will be the kind of context to how these kinds of shared interests that we've kind of developed have come about.
Yeah, I'll jump in on that. A couple of things again that were effective and helpful with remaining. Again, we have elementary aged children. We kept the bedtime. We sit and eat dinner at a dinner time. But some of the things were when I worked in the office, allegedly you get a lunch break, but if you're not really going anywhere, I just sit at my desk and I just plow through lunch. Well, when you've got a 9 and 11-year-old, you make lunch. That's a pivotal part. That's as important as anything going on. And so suddenly, not only am I the math tutor and the IT support, I'm the lunch lady. I'd work it in between my meetings and my work, but I took a lunch break and I put together lunches and we would sit and have lunch together. That was phenomenal. When you take away a commute in and out of the office, you have time to take family walks. And so, again, owning and understanding the privilege of the situation where we did not miss a paycheck.
Mm-hmm.
Worked from home, a multitude of blessings in my household afforded us to take advantage of that time when things were shut down and we weren't going to go to the Y for swimming lessons, and then on this night go to your soccer practice and that day go to your soccer game. We're together more. So I'll be very thankful when this period in our life, in our history passes and we work through it. But I'm very hopeful that some of those traditions and structures stay with our family and stay with our values. But again, yeah, the structure was imperative to say, you're going to wake up early. We're going to make our bread. We're going to have breakfast, etc. Now we get on our device and you do your work. This is how we're going to do it. We put that in place, and it was non-negotiable. Bedtime, still bedtime.
Mm-hmm. In the Talene household, I have older kiddos, and so really the bedtimes were out of the water, guys. I was thinking, I'm a very organized and by the book person, and I'm thinking, okay, we're in a pandemic. They can't go anywhere. Mom, you have to relax a little bit. So I did do some more relaxing, but then also some structuring in different areas. Because our house cleaner could no longer come, we all picked up chores around the house and we worked together to divide and conquer. Like movies are a big deal in this house. So all of the guys in the family created these lists of movies they wanted to see, and they would have these long conversations after they rated these movies, and it's a whole big ordeal. I think there's an Excel spreadsheet somewhere, Bob. But like you said, there's time for walks. There's times to exercise. I've become a runner, during pandemic. So it's been very surprising, some of the things that we've been able to do as a family, and really taking into consideration from a mental health perspective, are my kids getting what they need emotionally? Are they getting what they need physically? I don't want them to be sedentary. So really trying to get them outside, all of these different things that I'm thinking about as a mom and as an educator, as a school psychologist. It's all just running through your head. But for me, I really just wanted to give them balance. I didn't want to make anything too extreme for them, because I feel like with them, their stress comes out in different ways. And it's up to me as that parent to pick up on that and to help give them some coping skills. So that was something else we thought about, was developing some positive coping skills to deal, with the situation that we're in.
Chandra, that just reminded me of how we restructured our home schedule. Because once the school started their schedule last spring, it was nice, not quite as rigorous as what I created, a modification of the Khan Academy schedule. But with my son, he's supposed to be doing physical therapy that we can't always fit into, the after school activity schedule that you're, taxi mom for, or, how do you have practice 3 days a week and fit in physical therapy and all these different things that, instead we were able to go on walks. And actually my daughter attended class while we went on afternoon walks because she was listening to the instruction because she's more of an auditory learner. And we took the dog for a walk, and it was kind of nice to have that flexibility of what and where we, did during the day. It was usually during for my supervisors and bosses who are listening, I did it during my break time on my lunch hour or after work hours. But it was nice to have that flexibility. And then, like you were saying, like in between times, we would, have lunch together, or we maintained our, Friday was always pizza and movie night. And so, those were the things that we held true. And then from the time the kids were little, I always felt like it was really important, regardless of what activities the kids were in, that we all ate together at the dinner table, or, at least ate together. So we had that common time to come together and do things. And we don't have game night as much as we should, but just to add to the stress of the pandemic, were like a few power outages where we had game night by candlelight. And it was just, removing some of the additional stressors and distractions from not having to go to so many activities outside that helped us come together and be a little more resilient about, the things that we had to do versus the things that we could let go of. And then how are we going to flexibly, kind of pull together the things that we needed to without creating more stress for ourselves. It was kind of nice, actually. I'm enjoying a little bit more flexibility in our schedule. So we'll see how things play out as we ramp back up after the pandemic.
Great. I just want to take a minute to, as we're kind of wrapping up, to thank each of you for taking the time out of your schedules, for, a thank you to each of your families for the stories that you've shared about them. And I just want to thank you for openly sharing about this time and some of the challenges, but also the good things that have been happening in your homes. As we wrap up, are there any words of encouragement, either from parent to parent, or from educator to educator, or, any words of encouragement for anyone out there?
If I could throw this out to everyone, and it's personally poking fun at myself. Shame on me for taking so long to get to this point where we're now using Zoom or whatever platform you're using to communicate for work purposes ad nauseum. We finally had the bright idea to use it to connect with family across the country and during quarantine. And we Zoom with grandma and the cousins. We've had five families having large Zoom meetings where the cousins, and they're all young and they're all utterly ridiculously hilarious while they're doing it. And so to not let certain barriers, like, okay, you don't want to fly, that's fine. We can Zoom with our friends and family in Portland, and use these tools to stay connected as humans, as family members, as community members. And it's been very important and helpful to us.
I guess what I would say is, as parents, we're always concerned about our kids, and we're always pouring our energy into our kids and our families, but also to take a moment and consider your self-care. If you're not feeding yourself literally, figuratively, if you're not taking care of yourself, you're not going to be able to take care of your family to the best of your ability. So I would say be intentional about your self-care, no matter what that is. It shouldn't be one more thing, but really think about that and think about what you need to be your best, and don't feel guilty about it. Just make that time to focus on you.
I honestly don't know what to tell people. We've all been so differently impacted by this, and it's whatever you feel you need to do. Like, just kind of picking up on what Shonda had said earlier, I don't know that there's a right way to approach this situation. And I certainly wouldn't want to, like, based on my situation, make generalizations to other people. Just hopefully at some point, life resumes the way we want it to be, and until then, I think, just do what you can to make this work for you.
Yeah, I honestly, like, you guys all kind of summed it up. I think the only thing is just, as long as you're trying your best and you're flexible, everything comes together. I think that's the thing that we all have to, no matter what the plan is, it's never going to be the way that you planned it. There's always going to be a variation. So if we're flexible and kind and giving grace and space to each other to, again, like, make connections with each other and, move forward and work towards resilience. I think we can do this together. We can, for sure.
Absolutely. Well, I'd like to take this time to thank each of you again for joining with me this afternoon, taking the time out of your schedule, and for sharing. And for those of you who have stopped by to listen in on our conversation, I'd like to thank you for stopping in and listening to this quick bite of behavior. Thank you.
This concludes another PaTTAN Behavior Bite. Remember, this is just a bite of behavior. We'll see you next time.